Hello, I'm Donald McIntyre, founder of Etherplan. We help people discover the best apps and dApps to manage their money on the blockchain. This is Etherplan Live, and joining us today is Bill Barhydt, founder of Abra. Hello, Bill.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much for doing this interview.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
The other day, you tweeted something very interesting. You said, have you seen Abra's new digital currency portfolio manager and exchange service? I thought that was very interesting, and that's why I invited to this interview. But
That's great.
Before we talk about Abra, can you tell me about your background and how you started with Bitcoin?
Sure. It's a long background, so I've been in this kind of software, internet, crypto space for quite a while. Earlier in my career, I was at NASA, worked for the government for a while. Then I was a quant on Wall Street. I worked at Netscape in the early days. I worked on many projects related to PKI and public key infrastructure. Worked on SSL, the deployment of X509, which was the digital certificate standard, certificate authority design. So I've been involved in the crypto world since before most people knew that there was a crypto world, I suppose. And then spent a lot of time working on various startups after Netscape related to mobile banking, mobile wallet design, and that led to my very strong interest in the capabilities of Bitcoin and blockchain-based payment systems when it was first released, and I've been kind of all in ever since. So my interest here is really leveraging the Bitcoin and the blockchain tech for global financial inclusion, starting with the ability to do very simple investments on a smartphone, but eventually to offer more and more banking services using crypto technology.
That's amazing. So your background is a very good balance between technology, cryptography, Wall Street. I saw that you even took some courses in the New York Institute of Finance.
On mathematics at Goldman Sachs, I'm going to age myself, but over 20 years ago. So I said to somebody recently, I feel like Abra is the first job that I'm really qualified for. And it only took like 25 years because I had to learn all of these things over decades to be able to design Abra. And I may have found the first job where I could design a product that maybe nobody else could do. And that actually feels pretty good.
Well, let's talk about the product, about Abra.
Sure.
In my mind, Abra started first as a remittance concept and with the tellers. And now I found very interested when you mentioned the portfolio manager concept and the exchange service. So
yeah.
Is this second phase like an addition, or is it like a pivot?
It's more like a pivot in the sense that we're trying to figure out how to get to the promised land. So the promised land is the same. The promised land for me is, how do you design a bank where you become your own bank on your phone, and you have all the services you want, whether it's making investments, sending money, making payments, getting access to credit globally.
Yeah.
Literally 200 countries, 7 billion people, everybody has a level playing field for banking. So the question is, what are the steps to get there? I wanted the first step to be about payments and money transfer because I really felt that helping the immigrant consumer is something that I'm very passionate about. It's very noble. It's a good cause. It saves people a lot of money. But it also has much more intricate requirements for global deployment than what we're doing now. So if you can't get the money on and off the phone in the Abra model in a whole bunch of countries, doing payments and money transfer via Abra is pointless, right? It's very easy with our system to store money on a smartphone for the first time, right? But what we found is that getting the money on and off the phone in Mexico or getting the money on and off the phone in Colombia is actually very hard. And so we're going stepwise through this, where the first step for us is being able to make very simple crypto investments on the phone. Using this really cool new platform we've created that allows you to create investment contracts. Now, it turns out these investment contracts are exactly the same tech that we're going to use to facilitate remittances and money transfer later. 100% the same. The only difference is the platform needs to be deployed globally so that people in, again, Mexico and Colombia and Russia, or wherever, India and China, can get money on and off the phone. But in the first step, the US consumer can use Abra to make very simple investments in Bitcoin, Ether, fiat currencies. They can actually store up to 50 fiat currencies along with Bitcoin and Ether in the app, and easily move between them with a single portfolio interface, right? With no central custodian of funds. That's never been possible before. I'm not aware of any other app that allows you to store a digital dollar on the phone. So some of your viewers are probably familiar with Tether. Tether is a custodial service for being able to create a digital dollar. Abra is a non-custodial service for being able to create a digital dollar. And to my knowledge, we're the only company that's figured out how to do that. So the advantage of that is I can create all these digital assets in a single portfolio, move between them in a way that is completely decentralized in terms of using the blockchain versus an exchange. Most exchanges are just big SQL databases, right? They're 99% off chain, which means that the transactions for buying and selling don't touch the Bitcoin or Ether blockchain. With Abra, every transaction is actually on chain right now. Eventually, a lot of the transactions will use things like Lightning, but for right now, it's all on chain. And the point being that from a legal perspective, this is great for the consumer because it means they're in control of their own assets. They're not, their funds can't be hacked. We can offer very low cost transfers between Bitcoin and Ether, or Ether and fiat, or fiat and Bitcoin. And it also opens the door for more types of assets to be easily added to the platform in the future. So one of the things we're looking at, for example, is we want to be able to offer all of the digital currencies, not just Bitcoin and Ether, and be able to move between them using this investment model. So you know, no announcement yet, but this is setting the stage for things that we would like to do in the future.
Okay, bueno, that's a very good explanation, and let's unpack the parts.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's very reasonable, logical to say that maybe the first step is to have a digital wallet on your phone, and you can load money, buy Bitcoin and now Ether, and you can have many other crypto fiat currencies as well. And from there, that's a basis to do all the other services. For example, remittances and tellers, etc. So let's go. The first step would be how do people start using Abra? First, is it global? Is it still a global concept, or are you working in the US and Philippines only?
Okay, so let's break it down. So the Abra app itself works everywhere in the world. Okay. If you're in the US, you can use your bank account to buy the digital currency or get digital dollars into the system by doing a bank wire or an ACH. And that's in the US. And our goal is to extend that function to dozens of countries this year. And this is something that we're actively working on, right? So that if you're in Europe or in Mexico or in parts of Asia, you can also use your bank account to get money on and off the Abra app. So and then once you have the digital dollar on the app, you can convert those digital dollars to Bitcoin or to Ether or back to digital dollars. And so that leads to the second point, which is that if you're in another country, you can also load Bitcoin directly into the app and convert that Bitcoin to any fiat currency or to Ether and back and forth. So a few weeks ago, when the price of Bitcoin was falling, we had a lot of users all over the world who were depositing Bitcoin into Abra and then converting it into fiat currency because it allowed them to get a very quick dollar hedge versus Bitcoin without actually having to provide any ID information, because there's no bank involved in that transaction. So there's no KYC requirement.
That is very interesting. If I am in Argentina, I don't have a way of loading Argentine pesos, but I can send Bitcoin to my Abra wallet, and there I could buy dollars, for example, or pass the Bitcoin into dollars.
Or pesos.
Or pesos.
And you can convert the dollars to pesos and then the pesos to Bitcoin if there's some reason to do that.
There's some estimates that Argentines have like $50 billion under the mattress in physical dollars. So I think that a solution like Abra would be amazing.
Absolutely. you know, if you look at the local Bitcoin market in Argentina, it's exploding, right? That means that there's people on the streets who are able to take their pesos or US dollars and easily convert them to Bitcoin by just sending out a message to a bulletin board and meeting someone. They can take that Bitcoin, put it in Abra, move it between dollars and pesos at will, send the pesos as Bitcoin to someone else, or send the Ether as Bitcoin or as dollars to someone else. And so the idea is to have extreme flexibility with these assets that you're holding. Yes, you can use it to speculate on the value of Bitcoin and Ether, but you can also use it easily to get the money on and off the phone and move it between these fiat currencies.
Okay, if I'm in the US, in Argentina, Brazil, Philippines, Russia, or any country in the world, the first step then is to download the mobile app. Abra, let's clarify. Let's clarify.
Yes,
Abra.
You go to the App Store, right? You go to the App Store on iOS or Android, and you download the Abra app. And the Abra app, basically, you start it up. You verify your phone number, like when you install WhatsApp.
Yes.
The very first time you get a text message to verify that that's your phone number. That's it. Now, if you're not using your bank account, you don't have to tell us any more details about who you are.
There's no KYC requirements?
Only if you use your bank account. So if you want to, in the US, to wire money to Abra to buy those digital dollars to get money in the system, then you have to tell us who you are.
Okay.
But if you're just pushing Bitcoin into the app, the key's on your phone. So we don't need to know who you are.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yep.
I got the app. I got the app the other day, and I registered. And now that you're saying that, I remember that I only had to go through the KYC system when I connected my Chase account.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so most of our users internationally don't have a US bank account, so they're not providing any KYC details. They're able to load Bitcoin, store that Bitcoin as pesos, move it back to Bitcoin or Ether whenever they want. And Abra has no requirement to know who you are, and nor do we want to know who you are, because at that point, Abra is a transactional system for you. And our take is we have no right to know who you are. If there's some marketing reason why you want to voluntarily tell us who you are, that's fine. But one of our core values as a company is we believe in the individual's right to conduct all forms of legal commerce anywhere in the world unencumbered by unnecessary third-party people, rules, regulations, government. And we're putting our money where our mouth is in this regard.
That's amazing, because the other day I'm from South America. I'm from Argentina. I live here in the US, but I was talking to a friend of mine that works in Washington at the Inter-American Development Bank. And he told me that in Latin America, in the aggregate, about 50 or 60% of people are unbanked.
That's right.
And in some countries, 70 to 80% of the people are unbanked. And the main reason is know your customer rules. But on the other hand,
it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Because, sorry to cut you off, the banks can't really afford you as a customer, right? If you have a small dollar balance, and the customer doesn't want to give up a whole bunch of KYC information in some cases. So they're kind of both motivated to stay away from each other, which is not a good situation if you want to get access to credit or pay certain types of bills, et cetera, et cetera. So it creates this untenable situation about how to provide high quality financial services to people who can't reasonably touch the banking system.
The interesting thing is that he also told me that in terms of cellular phone or smartphone penetration, or just feature phone penetration, is the opposite. 70% of people have phones.
But here's the problem that, so the wireless carriers have tried to deploy these mobile money schemes all over the world. Everybody knows about M-Pesa in Kenya, and some of the similar services. And most of the wireless carrier-driven mobile money services have failed miserably. And most of them have failed because, to your point, it's very heavyweight. You have to sign up like you're joining a bank. They put all these artificial rules in place about KYC and other AML rules, even though you may have $10 on a phone. Why are you running sophisticated AML processes for a $10 bank balance. It makes no sense whatsoever, right? The customer doesn't care. So it's easier for the customer at that point, like you said, to store the money in a mattress than it is to deal with all this nonsense. And so that's part of the reason why M-Pesa was successful in the early days, was because they made it super easy to get the money on the phone without going through a whole lot of hassle. And so our goal is to be as friction-free as that, to the extent that we legally can in any jurisdiction in the world.
Two questions that I think are related. First, what is Abra as an entity? Is it a licensed money transmitter? And where? Is it a bank? Is it a registered investment advisor? Some kind of legal registration or license? Yeah. And let's talk about the model of the hosted versus user-controlled private key.
Great question. As a company, as a U.S. corporation, Abra is a software company. We're not a bank. We're not an MSB. We're not an e-money license holder. We're not a CFTC regulated entity, and we don't have to be any of those things. Abra has no access to consumer funds. When you're using the Abra app, you are storing money on your phone. The key is in this app.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no access to your money. Abra was designed that way explicitly so that we could deploy a single app globally and not have to know who the consumer is. Okay. So if you're just using Abra to store synthetic dollars, Bitcoin, invest in Ether, we don't need to know who you are. Now, how do we get the money on and off the phone? That relates to the legal status you talked about. So if you're using Abra in the US to get money on and off the phone via bank wire, Abra is partnering with third-party exchanges to facilitate the exchange of fiat into Bitcoin. Okay. So in that model, physically, Abra is not touching the money. We have bank partners who actually collect the funds, hand those funds to the exchange, facilitate the buy of Bitcoin, which is then pushed to your Abra app, but Abra never touched the money. Okay. So we've been putting partnerships in place all over the world to facilitate getting the money on and off using those exchanges. So if the exchange tells the Abra app, hey, I need to know who Dan is to be able to facilitate getting the money in, then the app will ask you for ID information. But until that moment, we don't ask you for any information. As a matter of fact, the information isn't stored at Abra. It's passed on to the third party and then deleted, right? So the idea is that Abra doesn't need to actually know that information until the exchange partner tells us that they need to know the information. So think of Abra as two different software products. There's one software product that basically uses Bitcoin and underlying smart contracts to store digital assets on the phone, dollars, Bitcoin, Ether, in the future, other assets. Then there's an exchange service that uses existing regulated exchanges to facilitate getting the money on and off the phone via fiat.
And the key to staying as a software company is to use third-party exchanges.
And to never touch the funds and never manage the keys. So that not only has a beautiful regulatory model, it also represents the ultimate security model for crypto, because there is no one-stop shopping for hacking Abra. If Abra has 100 million users, to steal all of the crypto, you would have to hack 100 million phones.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's definitely a great security model, because there's no central point where a hacker can steal all the money, like recently an exchange in Japan that they stole $500 million, etc. So
I guarantee you that every single exchange of any size, any crypto exchange of any size on this planet has already been hacked. I guarantee it. The only question is whether or not they have been public about it, and how much money has been lost. Whether it's 2FA hacks, where consumers are getting hacked by losing their phone number to SMS, which is a rampant problem in the United States, poor security practices, poor key management. There's myriad reasons consumers fund. And the best answer to that is don't leave your money on an exchange. Abra uses the exchanges as well, but we ephemeral messaging. The money comes in, the money comes out. we get it off. And that's the way, that's the best practice for using an exchange.
The fact,
whereas with Abra, because you're storing your keys, it's perfectly safe to leave your money there because you get a backup phrase, a mnemonic backup phrase that you can write down, put in a drawer or a safety deposit box, where if you lose your phone, you can type in the backup phrase and your entire wallet is recreated, using a Bitcoin standard model.
So yeah, I agree with you. It's scary, the concept, or imagining that all exchanges must have been hacked already. They just don't say it. And the solution, I agree that it's having everybody have their own private keys in this format. But for consumers today, it's also scary to control your private keys because we're all used to having the fatherly figure of the great bank keeping our money safe, etc., which is not really safe. But let's talk about how does it work. I have the app. So you just told me that I have my private keys in the phone. How can I be more? How can I be safer than a bank? How do you see that?
Yeah. So as soon as you install the Abra app, the first time you try to put money in, the app will ask you to write down the backup phrase. Make sure you do it. It'll let you skip that step, I think 2 or 3 times, and then it won't let you skip the step anymore. You have to do it before you can keep using the app, meaning you have to validate that you wrote down the phrase by typing it back into the app. And that's really important. Take the time to do it. It's your money. It's your responsibility to protect your money. Now, our goal is to make that super easy for you so that it's not scary. It's just part of the normal usage, but you have to do it. If you've done that, you're protected, right? You can lose your phone. You can delete the app. It doesn't matter at that point because you can always type the phrase back in to get your money back. And it's really that simple. And so we have people who also use Abra with a hardware wallet if they want to go one step further. So they'll withdraw Bitcoin from our app to a hardware wallet. And then when they want to use the Bitcoin to buy Ether or store it as fiat, they'll move the Bitcoin from the hardware wallet back to Abra using the web browser to move the money back. It's very simple.
That's very interesting. I'll say we can use Ledger, Nano, or Trezor as a backup. As a back end.
Many of our customers.
As a back end.
That's right.
Abra as a front end for everyday use.
I do that all the time. I have a whole bunch of Bitcoin offline. Nobody has access. It's completely unhackable. It's nowhere to be found. And every once in a while, I put money back in Abra. I always carry some Bitcoin and Ether with me now, and some cash on the Abra app. But the vast majority is in hardware wallets.
Just to clarify, so I have the app. I already wrote down and I have the passphrase in a very safe place. Now I am in Costa Rica. I lost the phone. It's in the deep sea, and I don't have access to the app. What happens? I buy a new phone.
Right.
I download the app.
Install Abra. You install Abra. You go to wallet security, which is a function inside the menu. You say restore wallet. It will ask you to type in the backup phrase that you had, and your entire wallet will be magically recreated.
That includes the Bitcoin wallet, the Ether wallet, and all the other fiat currencies?
Yes, because all of those currencies are stored in one wallet. What you're actually doing is you're using Bitcoin to store the dollars. You're using Bitcoin to store the Ether. And so by having one backup phrase, you're actually giving access to every single balance within that single wallet.
Okay, that's amazing. So to go to the basics, the app has a send and receive function. So I can move money. I can send Bitcoin into the wallet, and I can move money crypto to crypto. For now, you have Bitcoin and Ether. I can also do crypto to fiat, and fiat to crypto.
Correct. You can also send money to other Abra users via their phone number, and the recipient can receive. You can send Bitcoin to somebody who receives fiat. So if you're in Argentina and I want to send Bitcoin, I can actually choose for you to receive it in pesos, and you won't even know that I sent Bitcoin.
Question: if I have Bitcoin. Say I have 0.2 Bitcoin here, and I say, oh, I see many currencies here: British pound, Bulgarian lev, Canadian dollar. Say that I want to pass it to euro.
Yeah.
Can I do it here, even if I'm in Argentina, Brazil, Russia, or the US?
It doesn't matter where you are. The app works the same way in every country in the world. The only difference is accessing your bank account.
Wow.
So you can use all of the fiat currencies in every country in the world.
That's amazing. That's something I think I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, I think Abra has done some things here that were never possible before by taking advantage of our smart contract model.
It's going to be amazing when you include more like Zcash, ETC, Litecoin, I don't know, the other card, XMR, etc. That it's going to be great to have that functionality. That brings me to the question, within the portfolio management and exchange service, some people are more active and more like dedicated. Do you plan to have like charts and different kinds of orders and stuff like that, or are you planning to keep it simple?
So that's a really good question. It's a hard question. So let's just say that we've got a very detailed product roadmap for this year. I don't want to give it all away. We will definitely be adding more assets to the app very soon. I can't say which ones, but it's going to be pretty darn exciting. And then based upon user feedback, we're really trying to err on the side of ease of use. And as you can see, it's really one of the easiest to use apps in the crypto space, if not the banking space, that we've ever seen. And that's no small feat in the crypto world, right?
I agree.
And so we're always going to err on the side of usability versus feature bloat. And so now, that having been said, the education level of our users is going to go up over time. And we would rather go along for the ride with that and make sure that 100% of our users are really excited about the ease of use than having 15% of our users excited about some advanced feature. And so we'll see how that changes over time. I do think users will become more sophisticated over time. We'll respond accordingly. But for now, like I said, we're very focused on the ease of use.
Very good. Going back to the format of the wallet, I read on the website about the multi-signature feature. How does that work?
So this is really the key breakthrough, pardon the pun, of how Abra works. So what does it mean to have a digital dollar on a phone? What is physically happening when you put pesos, dollars, euros on the Abra app? Because there's no pesos in the bank at that point. There is no bank. You are the bank.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you an example of how you might do this in the physical world, and then explain how it relates to the multi-signature contracts to your question. If I owe you $100 and you're sitting next to me and I don't have $100, I could give you something worth $100 if you agree to accept it. Like I could hand you a collectible, like a baseball card I might have or something like that, and say, oh, I'll go sell it, and I have my money. Okay, and you might be taking risk that the value of the baseball card would go down before you sell it.
Yes.
Or I could actually, maybe I have some gold and I can hand you some gold and say, here's $100 worth of gold, and you can either keep it or sell it if you agree to do that. Now, in the case of gold, I used to work on Wall Street, so there's some financial engineering trickery that you can do to peg the value of the gold to the dollar, right? You can buy like a CFD or a swap contract that would eliminate any downside risk you have in the price of gold falling, so that you would always be able to say, I have at least $100 now, because the value of the gold plus this contract guarantees that the money that I would receive would never be below $100. Okay. What Abra has done is simulate that using Bitcoin and its underlying multi-signature scripting capabilities. Sorry, it's very technical. That's the way Abra works in the background, so that we can peg the value of Bitcoin to any asset that we choose in real time without taking any significant counterparty risk as Abra. So what that means in English is, I put a bunch of Bitcoin in the app, I fix the value of that Bitcoin to the dollar using these multi-signature contracts. So from the consumer's perspective, I can say I'm just holding dollars.
Okay.
Right. So another analogy in the physical world would be if you buy a gold fund contract, like to invest in gold, they don't ship a whole bunch of bars of gold to your house. Right. You get a contract which says if the value of gold goes up at the end of the contract, you get more cash.
Yes.
And if the value of gold goes down at the end of the contract, you lose cash. Effectively, the same thing is happening here using Bitcoin and multi-signature contracts in order to create a synthetic dollar.
Okay. So
I apologize that that's very complex. It actually took over a year to work out the mechanics of how to do this. The beauty of this is that from the consumer's perspective, they don't see any of it. They don't have to know how it works, why it works. They just know that it works. When you buy an ETF fund, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. When you swipe a credit card, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You just know that it works. And you know, Abra is the same way.
So when you mention multi-signature contracts there, these are the smart contracts to facilitate that like underlying swap activity where you hold BTC, but you're guaranteed the value of the X peso or dollar. But it's not about my wallet itself is not a multi-signature wallet where I can have my signature, a friend's signature, my wife's signature, everybody in the same wallet.
It wasn't meant, right? The multi-signature technology, the way we use it, is there explicitly to implement the synthetic currency. It's not meant to give other people signature access. That's not a feature that people really want today, in our opinion.
Okay. No, it's just my confusion.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. It's really there to facilitate the synthetic dollar.
Very good. So my last question regarding that then would be, who's the counterparty that guarantees? Is it Abra being on the other side, the counterparty, or is it also a third party?
That's the correct question. That's the correct question asked. So Abra is the counterparty to those contracts. The way to think about it is go back to the gold example where I'm fixing the value of gold in dollars. In order to protect myself from any downside risk as a consumer, if I'm holding gold, I can actually short the gold, right? And then I'm protected on the downside. And my only cost is the cost to short the gold. So Abra, in this case, acts as the counterparty to that short via the multi-sig contract. And Abra makes the consumer whole in the case that the price falls. And the consumer makes Abra whole in the case that the price rises. And the multi-sig contract does that automatically. Now, Abra is taking a long counterparty risk on these transactions. Again, very technical, I apologize. But we have figured out how to hedge away that risk at very, very low cost. And that's why the mechanics of this work out in a way that's very transparent to the consumer, because the consumer doesn't have to see what's going on, because Abra is able to hedge away all of its risk in the background without exposing the consumer to any of that complexity.
Very good. So that's why I guess you call the product a Bitcoin-based digital currency wallet, because the central asset underlying intermediate commodity is Bitcoin, and from there you can acquire the rest of the array of assets.
Yes, that is correct.
Last two questions. So the concept of tellers, and whoever was a teller now, is that staying but being paused, and you're going to recreate it in the future again?
Good question. So today we're running a retail teller program in the Philippines as a large test. We have about 2,000 teller locations live, and they do really well. As a matter of fact, we're surprised, to be honest with you, at how well they're doing, only because we're not really spending any marketing dollars. The word is getting out with consumers that they can go to a retail location, hand the teller cash, and then get either Bitcoin or pesos or Ether on their phone automatically. And we hope to expand this to other countries in the future. Right now, we're very focused on the next kind of set of features for the wallet, but this is something that we're very excited about. It's done
I think
very, very well for us.
I think it's an amazing concept. I agree of going gradually and going, taking the steps that the market can accept first. But I think that in the future, having tellers everywhere in the world, I think it's great news that you have 2,000 already in the Philippines. Is going to be a very good way for people to move physical things and turn them into Bitcoin and put them into the wallet and in and out into physical and digital.
Exactly right.
And so my last question is the fees. So you charge fees moving from asset to asset, and when a teller gives money to someone or receives money to someone?
No, so Abra itself, we don't charge transaction fees. So there's a few ways where this might cost the consumer money. The teller does charge a fee. That's up to the teller. Okay, so that's we prefer that the tellers charge 0, but obviously the teller needs to be incentivized, so they're probably going to charge a fee to the consumer. If the consumer is doing a transaction that involves moving or sending Bitcoin, we pass on the mining fee to the consumer. Although right now, for the next few weeks, we're running a trial where we're actually not charging the mining fee to the consumer. So now is actually a very good time to get into Abra because we're actually paying the mining fee for you for at least a few weeks.
Did you say mining fee?
Yes. So when you publish a transaction, there's a transaction fee on the Bitcoin network. This is called the mining fee.
Okay.
And so normally the consumer has to pay that fee. That doesn't go to Abra. That goes to the Bitcoin network for the miners to accept the transaction. Normally Abra passes that through to the consumer. We're running some trials right now where Abra absorbs that cost. So now is a very good time to get into Abra because you don't have to pay the mining fee. And that's it. So there are no transaction fees in the system. We make a small amount of money when you move between currencies. So if you go from pesos to dollars or dollars to pesos or dollars to Bitcoin, Abra makes a small fee on the spread between that rate. And that will vary from currency to currency and day to day, depending upon what's happening in the market. But it's not dissimilar to typical trading spreads or trading fees.
Very good. So then the tellers charge whatever they want to charge. That's a private transaction between the teller and his and the user. Then there is the Bitcoin mining fee or the transaction fee of the network that is currently being absorbed by Abra, but it exists. It's not an Abra revenue. And the other one is when you move from fiat currency to crypto, crypto to crypto, or fiat currency to fiat currency. Any movement between currencies, there's a normal market fee there.
There's a normal exchange rate spread.
Exchange rate.
And that's the kind of primary revenue driver for Abra. And our goal is to be able to keep the exchange rates as favorable to the consumer as possible to incentivize people to do as many transactions as they like.
That's amazing. Bueno, Bill, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your explanation. I think that Abra is a great product, and I'm looking forward to see Abra grow worldwide.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.